Last week, I mentioned that one of my core values is integrity. And over the years, as I started moving into more formal leadership roles, one of those things, I guess, that keeps me accountable and how I manifest integrity into the real world is through creating and crafting a vision. Just like any design process, as I mentioned with the double diamond, problem solving is all about going broad and then narrowing down. To me, a vision is the broadest way you can communicate a direction, and then all else that follows is kind of a distilled way or a how-to or coming up with the steps of getting there. And one other piece of design that I've learned throughout the years is that constraints are a good thing, and you don't want to have just an open blank canvas forever. And what a vision does is it narrows the idea just enough for you to start trying things out. And there's still a lot of creativity involved in figuring out on how to execute that vision. Hi, I'm Leah Federhoff, a user experience designer, writer, and life strategist, and I want to inspire you to thrive in work and life. When you have a clear vision of what you want for the future, and this could be as part of a company, as part of a project, a side business, or something that you're kickstarting on your own, or even anything you want to do in life because you're starting to feel that itch or that nagging that something could be better, it helps to articulate this in a clear vision. And you won't get it right necessarily the first time. But the idea is, once you have a vision, then all else can follow. It's easier to start investing in the right actions you want for yourself when you have a clear idea of what that outcome will be. So a couple of weeks ago, I talked about outcomes over resolutions and how I pivoted away from coming up with like a word for the year or a resolution for the year and focused more on how I want to feel by the end of the year. A vision is just that, right? You can project a year out, 5-10 years out. And once you start to understand how you want that to feel like and look like, you can try things. And when those things that you try, consistently and over time break, or you start to question, like, is this really the right thing? That's when you can test it against your vision. Like, can you still see those dots of how doing this thing now will get you there? If not, maybe it's time to try something else. Or maybe you can let go of that for now and pivot, right? And all of that is to say you want to be investing on the things that also are aligned with your values and make you feel good now, right? Because it's kind of silly to say like, oh, in 5 years, I'm going to be making 6 figures, and maybe your current job is as a lawyer and you don't want to be a lawyer, right? In your long-term vision, right? And then, what lever do you pull then? Like, is it time to invest in a different career now or a side hustle? How much of your current situation do you want to change now? What other things do you want to introduce? So that's kind of where it helps to know what, things in your life that you can start to play around with, and what are your must-haves. If you're the sole breadwinner of your family, probably doesn't make sense to ditch, the only career you have now. But nothing's going to stop you from looking or consulting or, finding other ways to get paid or start getting experience for the job you like. And hey, if you enjoy being a lawyer, then cool. That's part of your life vision. What else are you feeling? Maybe it's not enough time or flexibility to travel, or you don't feel like you're growing. Maybe you need to pivot your industry or your domain space, right? So not to say being a lawyer is a bad thing, but you can start asking yourself, what parts of it now are giving you that nagging feeling that something's off or something's not quite fitting into where you want to go. And that's where you need to simply get curious about and find alignment in. And then whatever you discover there can start to become part of your life vision. And it's a simple way of iterating and curating that. I remember in podcast episode 4, I was talking to Courtney Jones, and she was talking about how she was starting to create an app, and it's something that she's never done before. She realized a pain point among her peers, people she was working with, and decided to, be the change she wants to see. And I remember her, coming back to this idea of reverse engineering. She loves to do it. She loves figuring out what that vision or that goal is, and then working backwards on how to get there. And talking to her inspired me because you can do that with anything. Anything that you're curious enough about and want to find a better path forward for, you can do it. And hey, why not do the same thing to a habit or your life in general, right? If you feel that something has room to change, then go for it. Reverse engineer the steps to get there. Lately, I've also been obsessed with creating buildings out of Legos. They're pre-boxed Lego creator kits, and I've made a bookstore and like a little shopping plaza of like these Lego 3-story buildings. And what brings me joy, right, is not only am I going through this booklet, like 100 pages step by step, I'm looking for the pieces, they're in different bags, I'm organizing by color. And what motivates me is, I do get in the flow while constructing it, but that end state of knowing that I'm going to have this thing, this vision, right? Like I see the picture on the box and I want that. And the steps I'm getting, it feels good to know I'm getting there, right? And I think that's where we find this flow state. It's challenging still, right? I still have to make sure I execute on the instructions, but I can see the vision and work towards it. So I have a few tips on how you can create a vision for yourself if you're out of practice or want to see how I break it down. And I'm evolving this as well. But step 1, once again, is getting clear on values. And I have a couple of previous videos around why this is so important and what values can do for you. But part of this is making sure that you're doing it, you're narrowing, you're adding constraints in a way that fills you with energy and doesn't deplete it. It's aligned with how you actually want to get there and isn't a way of like forcing yourself to, get to a certain outcome while neglecting how you want to get there, right? So it helps to have those values front and center and reflect on those as you're crafting this vision. Tip 2 is simple. You're painting a picture of what that outcome can be. And a good exercise I've done to do this is to spend 10 minutes in a quiet room with a blank journal and just free write. Imagine a day where you wake up 10 years from now, 80 years from now, what would that successful life look like and feel like? The reason why something like this is so valuable is more often than not, as we're navigating our day-to-day, we're not really thinking about that end feeling, right? There's a story that's circulated now, for years, but when older folks were asked by a nurse, if you had any regrets throughout your life, I believe it was a hospice care nurse, the responses she heard were, I wish I told these people I love them, or I wish I spent more time with people or with family or doing things outside of work. And Swishie is about thriving in work and life, but it's not thriving in work in sacrifice of living a good life, right? It's good to love the work you do as a form of action, while I see life, right, as the act of living, of being, and it's a flow or a balance between what you put out into the world, right, these actions or the work you do, and how you receive it back or how you are being in the world, right? Which is life. So with that in mind, make sure that when you're thinking about your vision, that you think about how do you want to be remembered, right? If you were to leave the earth, how do you want to tell your grandkids about your life? What stories are the most important to you, right? And then that starts to dig up even more questions about how might you live your best life now? How might you be motivated towards the actions you decide to pursue? And what is that end feeling you want to get out of it? And then finally, as you're crafting a vision, the fun part then becomes, how will you make it happen? I have a vision from last year, which was I want to live a life full of growth and new opportunities. And I did that. I mentioned this in my Designing a Fulfilling Life Part 1 and 2 back in December, and also my last video of December, which was to slow down. And a lot of this resonates with how that year went because I invited so many new experiences. I, was at the point of burning out or saying yes to too much. This year I want to go deeper and focus. And part of that is letting go of having resolutions, but I know how I want to feel like. So that's all I mean by, crafting a vision for this year. To me, I haven't found the exact words yet, but I do want it to be filled with focus, with being present, with saying no to more things. And that way it's easier to prioritize how I want my day to look like or my week to look like. What becomes important in the grand scheme of things, and what things can I let go of? And where can I release that pressure on myself to work when I don't feel like it? Or to act when it's easier to let go and let be, right? And I think that is going to be this constant presence. But I encourage you to do the same. Like, ask yourself today, what can I let go of? Where am I putting pressure where it doesn't have to have that much pressure? Leave me a comment below. I'm curious to hear what this looks like for you. So there you have it. Paint this picture. Get clear on your values. Paint this picture for yourself, and then see if it inspires you to come up with different ways on how to get there. And that's when you know you've had a solid vision. The actual solution isn't written down yet, but you have a direction to try out multiple ways of getting there. And it's a practice, and you can evolve it. But there is something to be said about knowing a direction you want to move forward in, and then you can start to see the bits and pieces of your life that are moving towards that, and ones that are distracting you or detracting you from that. So let me know where you land with on this vision you have so far. What does it look like? And what are a few ways you're thinking that you might get there? That's all I have for today. So thank you for listening to this episode of Swishie. And if you enjoyed it, subscribe and share with friends. And also check out my redesigned website at swishie.com and sign up for my newsletter if you haven't already. I have free and paid subscriptions. Free will get you all the updates with my podcast and new episodes released. And then when you subscribe as a paid member, you get more downloadables, worksheets, exercises, guided prompts, and more. I have a lot planned for this year, which I'm really excited about. Anyway, hope to see you next week and enjoy the rest of your week. Thanks. Bye. If you enjoyed this, subscribe and share with friends.